Welcome to the regular meeting of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority. Shall we all not rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, or should we rise for today?
There's
No rising.
Okay, we don't need that.
no bread being made.
If it was a big public meeting, I would want to do that. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Chair Sinks.
Here.
Director Gibbons.
Here.
Vice Chair Rennie.
Here.
Director Miller.
Here.
Absent is Director McAllister and Director Harney.
Okay. Public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Is there anybody from the... Yes, there is.
Hi, James Toledo, Sunnyvale, the Sunnyvale Pool and Carbon Free Mountain View as well. Last week's board meeting at PCE, Peninsula Clean Energy, just some information you might want. Their first enrollment, phase one, and that is happening now. It's about 70,000 of their accounts. Total accounts about 300,000. So it's relatively small because they used to have a second and third. Now they're just having a big phase two in April. But this is still significant. Their opt-out.
How many thousand now in 30?
70,000 now. So
And the balance of 300.
200.
total 300. So 230,000. So what's happening now is 20,000 residential accounts and all their small and medium businesses in San Mateo County. Their opt-out rate is really good. It's 0.65% after the first two enrollments as of about the middle of last week. So it's less than 1%. Based on what Sonoma Clean Power told me, that what comes after the enrollment and up to about 6 months after the first bill shows up in any given customer's account, that's when another half of the opt-outs happen. So that translates to a 1.3% opt-out rate, which is really good. Two main reasons for opting out: don't like government programs, and don't like the fact that the whole thing's set up on an automatic enrollment. But I think there's things that can be done about both. There's another thing that I noticed the way that they're doing their call center. So there's a significant number of opt-outs going through their call system, that just through an IVR process, the automated phone. And I actually tested it myself yesterday, up to the point where I had to enter an account number, which I didn't have for them. But they will, on the second pressing of the button you want to opt out, they have a nice little blurb about, we're offering you a choice now and so forth, but if you still want to opt out, press 1. I would suggest that unless there's a reason, why make it too easy? But that's about a third of their opt-outs are going through, and I'll double check the numbers.
Please press the following 20-digit code.
It should go to...
Yes, exactly.
Every one of those second pushes should go to someone live on the phone that can talk through and say, well, if you don't like the automatic opt-outs, we'll assume that you're going to opt out. So let's start fresh and assume you're opting out. So now you have a choice. What would be better for you? Or something like that. I mean, there's things to do. But so they've got a really good opt-out rate, but even looks to me like they've got a few ways to improve. There's a lot of potential factors for how good they're doing. They've done a good job at multilingual. Their website is not only English, but Spanish and Chinese. Works for their territory. Most of the web pages, the main web pages, are in Spanish and Chinese also. Not every single one. They also have done 68 different kinds of outreach meetings and workshops. So they've done a lot of that. Plus, there's certain demographics, but they do include other communities all over, different demographics across San Mateo. So it's not just the high, wealth. There are some parts of East Palo Alto, for example, that are in enrollment 1. So it's not just that. So they're doing a good job. So it's, what is their success? It's a good thing to look at. Just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. My city manager noted that they have television ads on. And I thought to myself, wow, that is a very expensive form of marketing. 300,000 customers on the peninsula, but if it's, regular television, you're talking about saturating the Bay Area. I don't know how efficient that is, but
The cable networks have actually gotten pretty good
They can
at being
target.
able to segment.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I'm seeing some of their ads down here too. But I don't think you have to buy the whole Bay Area.
Oh, okay.
The
It
total
sounds-
marketing budget's not that big.
I'll look into it.
It's interesting.
And
I mean, it would be interesting to know why they made that choice.
I was going to be, I think I even said to Misty, well, next time they have one of those TV or radio fundraisers and they say, what group is answering the phones? And say, Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Because it's a good audience, good target
I don't know
audience.
about you, but come November 8th, I ain't doing no more fundraising for a year. Have a nice day.
Just go to Apple; they have tons of money.
You don't like grubbing for money, huh?
I heard.
No.
I heard your mayor walked right in and said, "Give me money," and they received him well. Sorry.
After the campaign he ran. Anyway, that's off topic.
Yep.
If there's no more public comment, we will move. To item 1A, approving the minutes of the August 24th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, public comment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes. We will move on to item 2, the proposed retirement plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall that very early on in the process, I've recommended that we go Social Security plus 10% from the employer to the employee into a 401A retirement plan. After we discussed it with you, we've revised our thinking and went back and looked at what's available out there, and I found out to my delight that there are a number of options that we can go with aside from CalPERS, PARS being one. I've asked the folks from PARS to come and give us a presentation. Jennifer's here. She's going to go through a presentation with you for the next 10 minutes. Then after that, she'll be here to answer any questions, and I will be here as well. Then we'll talk about what's the best thing to recommend going forward.
Good.
Thank you.
Which, besides Cupertino, who else
Thank you.
uses PARS? Anybody here?
Okay, well, we also have Campbell, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and Sunnyvale, but I'm thinking everyone's here.
I'm
Campbell?
sorry, we don't use PARS.
You use part for your part-time employees.
Campbell?
So from your quorum here, Cupertino, Campbell, Gilroy, Morgan Hill, and Sunnyvale.
But not for the full blown, just for the part-time.
Exactly. And then a few other plans, like Cupertino, we have our 115 trust there as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Oh, never mind, I'll wait.
But if we have a presentation and then we can do questions.
Yeah, we'll go with the
How's that?
presentation first, and
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Perfect. So I'm not going to cover every single page on here. We provided more information, hopefully some bedtime reading there fun for you. But I do want to give you a good overview of the plan itself. Some of you know our company, some of you don't, so I want to make sure that I cover some of that information on here. As I go through the presentation, I'll reference a few pages, but for time purposes, I'll try to give you the best overview on the account. My name is Jennifer Mays. I work for the Client Services Department at PARS. The main consultant for this is Dennis Yu. He unfortunately could not be here today, but he has had about over 20 years of experience working in this business with this company and retirement plans. We'll start off on page number 2. Give you an overview of PARS. PARS has actually been around for over 33 years, implementing, administering, and designing plans specifically for government agencies. We are a private company, but we only service governmental agencies. We are the 3rd largest multiple employer system in California. As I mentioned, some of you are already clients in our over 1,400 different types of retirement plans that we actually provide. We do have over 800 member agencies, over $2.1 billion under our administration, and we are located in Southern California, but we're up and down the state all the time. The main goal of PARS is so that you have local control of your plan and you have flexibility in your services on there. We'll go over to slide number 4. Among those 800 agencies that I mentioned, these these agencies on slide number 4, these are the ones that are using the defined contribution plan that you're looking to use. For example, up here we'll have City of Redwood City that we assist. Some of our services, to give you an example, is we do annual meetings so that the city knows the plan status, how it's doing, if there's any legislative changes that are on the horizon. We do a lot of servicing for each agency. We don't do a one size or one shoe fits all. Every agency has different needs and different requirements. For example, Rod, for the City of Cupertino, they require us to come every quarter, and we're more than happy to do that for them. So it doesn't have to be once a year. It could be more often depending on the city's need. We do also do participant orientations for anybody that's in the plan itself. So we have an investment manager and somebody from PARS comes out and provides the provisions of the plan, investment options, a full group of services that we provide for your participants on the account for this. Okay. We're going to go ahead and flip a few pages. We're going to go to slide number 7. So first, we assist in the administration of the plan. We have John Hancock that assists for this specific group for the investments. These are self-directed plans for each participant. They do have online access, online tools, phone tools, and as I mentioned, educational orientations, a different variety of no-load mutual funds. It's daily valued. They receive quarterly statements on the account so that they're aware of this plan. We have a number of pre-selected mutual funds, but also with this platform, you also receive self-directed brokerage accounts. Okay. We'll flip over to slide number 8. Slide number 8 actually shows you the pre-selected funds that John Hancock has selected for this platform. They do make sure that they prudently select the investments for a long-term investor on the account. For example, if somebody, you hire somebody maybe straight out of college, doesn't really know the investment world, or maybe somebody that just doesn't know the investment world in general, we do have life cycle portfolios that they can go into based on their date of birth. When they're looking to retire, they have the option of going into those portfolios. Or if somebody's not ready to make that investment selection, but they want to make sure their money's out in the market, they would default into those portfolios. But if somebody wants to, allocate their assets a little bit more, then there's other mutual funds that are available to them. Now, we do have a lot of people that are very savvy in investment, and they want to go ahead and make that decision for themselves. This platform allows all of those individuals to be able to do that on the account. The average embedded fee for these are approximately 81 basis points on the account. And with that, I'll go ahead and talk about the fees for this plan itself.
Could I? So that's the aggregate of all of these things here?
Correct, the average. And I do have
average.
something else in the enclosures that shows individually each fund, the embedded ratios.
Someplace in here that
Yes.
you'll get to that? Thank
Yes,
you.
and I'll reference that in just a moment. Let's go ahead and roll over to page number 11. Let's talk about the fees on the plan. And so again, I'm just trying to give you an overview, just for timing-wise, overview of the plan itself and the company itself. If you were to select PARS, these are the fees that the agency would actually see, and it's 2 different fees. First, it's the setup fee, which is $1,500 based on the plan design, signature-ready documents, meeting with staff, and the consultation for the design of the plan itself. The second fee that the agency may potentially see, because again, these can either be paid out of plan assets or the agency can pay it themselves, and that is the ongoing administration fee, which is asset-based. And these fees are for monthly account statements, ongoing compliance and audits. Because we are a California-based company, there are certain compliance that you have to meet every year, and PARS will do that for you through the State Controller's Office as well. Our call centers, our annual reviews, and our participant orientations as well. That fee itself is based on assets. As I mentioned, there is a minimum monthly of $400, but for assets up to $2.5 million, it's approximately 50 basis points. From 2.5 and up, it's 35 basis points on there. As I mentioned, this could either be paid by the agency or by the participant on there. The other two fees on the account would be the distribution fee, which is actually paid by the participant at the time that they take out their distribution. That's for processing the claim, the 1099 form on the account. That's $25 on there. In addition, additionally to that, any type of fund, the embedded rate or expense ratio on there would be something that they take out. All of those expense ratios are in the enclosures of this handbook. So if you flip over, you'll see the fund check. That has all the different expense ratios on the account for the ones that have been pre-selected, of course, on there. You have a selection of active and passive investment strategies on there. And again, you also have the self-directed accounts and the brokerage, the discounted brokerages that are also available on there. But these are the pre-selected ones. And you'll see historical returns as well for these.
If you elect to put all your money into the brokerage accounts and not select any of these funds, do you pay anything to
Yes.
Jan Hancock?
You would actually pay separate fees, and those could potentially be a $25 setup fee, an annual base fee, and a market value fee, and transaction fees. So if you're doing any trading, depending how often you're doing trading, there's trading fees on the account as well.
What are the annual and
You're looking at a $25 setup fee, an annual of $120 on the account, and 10 basis points of assets.
okay, then the transaction fee is pretty much a minimum because you use the
Exactly.
discount broker?
Yes, exactly.
Which discount broker are they
It's
using?
Ameritrade.
American, got it. So it's $10 a trade.
Exactly. So I just wanted to give you an overview regarding PARS, who we are as a company, what we do, and what this plan could potentially do. Sometimes we're often asked, well, how do you compare to your competitors when it comes to the fees? Many of our competitors are nationwide. They're not California-based. We've often seen that our competitors do not do the annual audit that's supposed to be submitted to the state controller's office. They don't do the amended and restated document that's due every 6 years. So it's really not an apples-to-apples comparison. Also, a lot of this information is sometimes not publicly shown unless, for example, Tom was to be asked by another provider, well, what are PARS fees? Things like that. So again, not apples to apples, but we do believe that our plan is competitive enough with other providers. Okay. I'll open it up to any questions, concerns.
So, the overhead I pay on an S&P 500 index fund ETF is under 0.1%,
0.09, 0.07.
and the 500 index fund here is 0.63. If somebody's looking for a broad-based index, that's usually the one that financial planners suggest. 0.63 compared to 0.09 is a big difference. If I look at the plan for dummies, right, the mixed plan, if I'm retiring in 2030, and your expense ratio for this plan, the John Hancock plan, is 0.97%. I was just looking here at Vanguard's plan, which is what I pay. It's 0.15%. So how in the world do we talk to our employees about value when you've chosen fees that are plans that are so much more? And if you're already offering Vanguard, why wouldn't you offer a whole basket of them rather than these very overpriced plans?
Well, these have currently been selected by John Hancock. You
I
also
know.
have
Do we have any other option besides John Hancock?
We do have another provider that we could potentially do, but it's a little bit more high-based. The only thing that you do have to realize, too, is these are for your small company that's starting to look out, a public agency with
What's the
certain
kickback
aspects.
then? I mean, why would anybody pay 0.97% for a cycle fund or 0.63% to invest in the S&P 500? What's going on here?
Your asset base may be different than some of these participants. Some of these participant accounts may be, hundreds.
Let me try this again.
Go ahead.
So when I go to a company, I'm in a 401k. The company is paying fees, fair fees, to administer the plan, but the investment vehicles can be SPY, one of the biggest funds for S&P 500. Employees are not paying 0.6% overhead on an ETF that is passively managed. So I don't get it.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, it's okay.
somebody would have to convince me that we're doing something good for employees here, but this doesn't look to be.
It's not in your report, but I am assuming that PARS, is compensated from the funds.
No, we are not compensated.
There's no
for these.
There's no 12B1 fees.
No,
or
these
anything
are
like
all the
that?
fees to John Hancock, or the funds themselves on there, but it's nothing, we don't share the embedded fees on the account.
Schwab, Fidelity, none of these big companies would work with you on any
We
of this
do
stuff?
have Schwab, but it is more expensive on the account. So we use
So
Schwab.
tell me about whose expense we're talking about.
For Schwab, it is about an $800 minimum fee administratively. It's just a
Per
platform.
employee?
No, for the entire agency.
Yeah, but I mean, we're talking about, if we have 20, 30 employees having to pay nearly 0.5% or most of 1% more, that's gigantic.
So maybe I don't understand the whole structure, right? There's your organization that is PARS,
Yes.
and your brokerage house is TD Ameritrade.
Correct. If they look at a self-directed brokerage.
And if it's not self-directed, this is really a John Hancock organized situation.
Exactly.
And so while you may not get a 12B1 fee, John Hancock is actually the one that's getting those fees.
Exactly.
So when you look at the fiduciary responsibilities of a retirement plan, where Rod was at and where I think I'm at is John Hancock's making an extra 0.5% on the S&P 500 is what I'm hearing.
Well, we can send you the breakdown of how they differentiate that with the 12B1 fees on the account. But do also understand that for economies of scale, you're not individually going to an agent, to Vanguard and selecting that. This is an employer-sponsored plan.
Yeah.
So it's not individual on the
To be
account.
really honest, this will sound really weird, and I don't know where my other board members would be on this.
Yeah.
I would much rather pay you guys more
Yeah.
and have funds that had
No loads.
as
Well,
low of expense
market
ratio
rate
as you
loads,
can
not
get.
this.
And maybe it's not the last 200th of a percent or something, but something that's sort of in the ballpark. The S&P 500 is quite a benchmark, and every retirement fund has one, and they're all getting beat up nationwide right now over paying absorbent fees in that, and really the fee is going to John Hancock is what I'm hearing, and I would
Correct,
be
yeah.
surprised
There
if
is a discount on this, which is 0.17. So from the expense ratio that you show on here, there's an additional 0.17 basis points that goes down. I know it's not significant compared to what you're looking at in your account, but there is that because you're in the PARS platform.
Yeah, so we get a little bit of a discount, but it's still, again, back to my premise. If you showed me an S&P 500 that was 0.1, we'd be worrying about hundredths of a percent. And if we were paying you $800, I think it would all be much more above board. I really worry about having a bunch of investment choices that have been prepackaged to make John Hancock money. I don't know what the Schwab situation would look like, but and I don't know if you know the numbers off your top of your head, but if there was a Schwab platform that we had to pay you a minimum of $800 a month for, is it the Schwab S&P 500 that we get, or are we still getting the same one that you noted in here?
I can get you the information for that. No, I don't have that information, but I can give you that option for the Schwab account.
Yeah, Schwab has a whole bunch of
I know, yeah.
really... Anyway,
So the question probably that I think I'm hearing here is, if we sign up with PARS, then PARS is doing all the administrative work,
Exactly.
and you have to charge them all of it.
Exactly.
Then the question is, we know the money's going to get invested in Vanguard and in Fidelity, in whichever account, or why do we need to pay somebody in the middle between you and
These
those
are not.
guys?
Well, it's not that it's in the middle. These are to invest in those funds. So they're the embedded fees on the account. It's for any marketing, how you say 12B1 fees. It's the managers within the fund. So it's not something that's being paid. It's not an administration fee essentially.
Well, we understand the cost of the fund itself. So Vanguard is going to be charging 0.1% on this fund or 0.5% on the other fund. But you overlayering, it sounds, another 0.6% coming from Jen Hancock in order to buy you that stuff. What couldn't you buy for us?
Well, it's not overlaying. So the expense fee that you have that's it. so I'm not sure what you're referring by
So
the.
it's the combination of what Jan
Yeah, this
charges
is-
and what.
Exactly, yeah, so it's not a separate John Hancock and embedded fees, it's all one.
Having selected,
Yeah.
this is what's wrong with these sorts of plans.
Yeah, I'm inclined, I've had them for years, because that's all I was given, and I'm always been frustrated by them. And maybe, this won't be necessary, you two gentlemen in particular seem much more sophisticated on this than I am. I get the basics, but not a lot of the detail. If we could have a scenario that says in 2 years, when we have 20 employees, 20 employees, and we assume that they've all put in 100% of their maximum, what would our costs be? And in this scenario, we would be paying, just say it comes out to $3 million, just say, and then you have your formula. So our monthly fee would be $560 or whatever the math is. And then within that, you'd say 50% take the easy opt-out and 50% do something else. Is there any way we could compare, if you guys think it's necessary, you may be sophisticated enough to know this. I think it's much easier to understand with an example how much those fees actually add up to. And if we're going to spend $800 instead of $500, which are $400, which is what we're talking about, it's a difference over 12 months. How much are we actually losing in terms of investment? Sometimes it's less than you think. Sometimes it's more than you think.
No, I understand that nature. And my interesting, and where I landed on this, which is a little bit different, this will sound really weird, and if it cost us more to pay PARs, but our employees had fund choices.
I'm exactly there.
Just because I just really think as an employee, it pisses you off
It
more
does.
than anything to say this is your S&P 500 fund, you're paying one of the highest fees in the nation on your S&P
Right.
500 fund. What the hell is my employer doing?
Right.
That puts me in this, and there's lawsuits that are happening now, and there's federal regulation going on, and
Well, I know
states
the
have
banks
passed
are
rules.
pulling out of it. So maybe
Yeah.
I'm asking.
No, but
I
your
have-
question is very logical. I would like to know how much it cost us for whichever option, and
Right.
your 2-year scenario is
Right.
an excellent scenario. So
Yeah, it's just really trying to see, because it's a quagmire out there, and many people don't know enough to understand how much they're actually paying, and then when they find out, they get really upset.
yeah, and then they're 10 years into it, and they're like, I've been paying 0.5% per year on
Yeah.
my investments more,
Yeah.
and you add up 10 years of 0.5%,
It
and
adds
it's like
way up.
it starts to add this. It's like it's funny because you're buying the exact same thing. It's like buying Cheerios in one store, and the next store over it's 50 cents a box cheaper, but your employer said you could only shop in store A.
Or if you buy it in the cheapest store, you have to buy 2 boxes at a time, and you may not use 2 boxes at a time.
Yeah, well, maybe cereal's not a good example. I don't know.
I understand your point, but you also have to realize that these are individuals that they can't go out individually, or maybe they could go out, but if they want an employer-sponsored plan, these are competitive rates. If you look at maybe the CalPERS embedded fees, you'll see that they're not the same as if you go and get a 401k type of fee. These are employer-sponsored plans, and they provide different services, education on the account.
I will bet you that some of your employers will be sued in the next 12 to 18 months over your S&P 500 choice.
I mean,
Because of where everything is going. National legislation, there's a big movement about overcharging of fees in retirement plans. And so I get what you're saying. I'm just saying the way the world is moving and shifting. And we live in a world where there's 2 investment startup companies, Benevity and who's the other one? Both high-tech robo-investing, right? I mean, this is part of what's going on in Silicon Valley. There's a lot of scrutiny in this exact space. So at least a couple of us are somewhat uncomfortable with
Comparing like to your
the higher level fee structure. I have no problem with, to be really honest. The PARS fees all seem good. It was when we got to the individual funds, which is really the John Hancock level, it really felt a little bit more highway robberish. Be very interesting to see what the plan would look like instead of on John Hancock, but based on Schwab,
We
because
can certainly do that for
because
you.
I know they are trying to be very competitive on their fees, and if the fees are
Fidelity
higher,
is, Schwab is, Vanguard is, right?
yeah, they all are playing, but it's where could we get a retirement plan from? If we could get a
No, no,
Schwab,
I understand. So, I mean,
combination.
it just seems, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, if I compound the difference between your John Hancock 2030 plan and the one from Vanguard, again, it's 0.97%, you list. Vanguard lists that at 0.15. That's a difference of, 0.83. If you compound that over 20 years, 0.83%. If you compound that over 20 years, you're talking about real money. And that's coming out of our employees' pockets. So paying upfront fees as an agency to you to have our employees handled is good. But, I mean, I wouldn't want that kind of burden placed on the investments they're putting into retirement.
And we can certainly provide you with the John Hancock platform to see if that maybe makes you
Some other
Schwab.
platform.
Yeah.
So
Somebody
look for the lowest possible fee.
Fund expense.
Fund, thank you, that's the
I mean-
right word, fund expenses. Look for the program that offers the lowest possible fund expenses.
So another one is BlackRock's S&P 500.
Yeah.
0.07%. 0.07%. It's called IVV. The one in here, 0.63.
And that's after the 0.17
Reduction.
discount.
Discount.
Well, you would.
Well, no,
add
it wasn't, but
No,
okay.
I know,
So
no, you're right. I got you. I'm just
0.63
saying.
minus 0.17
Yeah.
is still 0.4.
0.5 something.
Yeah, and so, that's, you're talking about nearly a half point difference.
And I think it's probably more in some other funds. So I think
0.5.
Jennifer, you heard us.
No, it's certainly, and that's what it is. Every
It's all
agency has
one
different
line.
needs, and we'll go back into the drawing board and we'll start again.
I know
That's
it's
why
in
respectful
defense of,
legislation
but just to let you guys know that I have looked at least at about 3 or 4 different plans that would pass my way for a 401 investment, retirement investment, and it's just the fees that they charge is absolutely astounding, and you have to go through 3 or 4 different levels with everybody chopping in,
Right.
0.3 here, 0.2 here, and by the time
Yeah.
you look at a fund like Vanguard, which has an expense ratio of 0.1%. By the time you're done and you get in the proposal from those guys, it's 1.6%.
Because everybody else has got a cut.
Everybody got a piece of it.
I mean, it really you originally came and said, let's just give employees money to stick in a retirement account.
I know.
That's looking better all the time. Even
Personally,
though we asked you to pursue something that made us look more conventional, right? And kind of, if it gets to be too much, you just say, where's the? You got to really ask, where's the value for the employee? Right?
Again, that's my fix. That we offer a plan, and on the surface, it looks like everybody else's 401a. And when you, as the employees, some of them will be pretty sophisticated, considering the job skill set that we want for them. I don't want them sitting around frustrated and grousing because we've made these decisions. And there's not a week that doesn't go by where I'm reading about this sort of stuff because of the financial stuff I follow. This is the emerging area of corporate retirement plans. People are really getting upset about this, and so is the legislature.
They should.
So,
now, Jennifer, when you go back and work on an
Yeah.
I'm
alternative,
surprised Vanguard
keep
doesn't
in mind
just
that
offer-
we looking at growing into that 2.5 million.
Okay.
If the board approves of what we are asking for, probably inside 3 to 4 years, we'll be able to
Would that be the plan?
be at the $2.5 million
Okay.
asset. So that probably
Schwab's trying to
maybe
compete with all of them on
an
Yes.
incentive for you guys to give us something that would work.
Okay, there's filing compliance, all this stuff.
Okay, that sounds good.
So paying fairly for overhead.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
So we'll report back then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your listening and
Thank you.
helping us
Yes,
sort
thank
it
you
out.
very much, yes.
So, but, Rod, you should at least say big picture. I think we're happy. It's down at this other level that's really the problem for us.
Okay, and we'll do everything we can to fix that for you.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you soon then. Thank you.
All right,
All right,
thanks,
too.
Director.
Before we leave this item, I'd like to go into the recommendation itself of at what level can we fund a retirement plan.
Okay.
Back again to the choices that we have. We started with Social Security plus some sort of matching fund retirement plan 401A. So that was the initial approach. But then obviously we at one point discount CalPERS as an option because of all the issues associated with it, and that's how we landed on something that would on PARS as an option.
Well, it'll be interesting to understand the total overhead for the agency and also for employees. Let's say on something basic and vanilla as we're willing to donate X dollars to this, meaning employee retirement, okay? How would we most efficiently use that money to maximize our employees' return if we didn't care what the allocation was between agency fees and them, but net, after all of these investment expenses are paid, after the overhead of the fund, let's say, to make this simple, S&P 500, how would we maximize the total amount after an employee worked for this agency for 20 years if we had X dollars to spend on that employee, including all the overhead and fees? How would we maximize the employee benefit? At the end of the day, right, I think that's the right question. I think you've heard that we're willing to take the overhead for the employee to make that investment vehicle very efficient. But I think at the end of the day, it's those kind of questions we should ask as we're evaluating all this stuff at a big picture level. Hey, we're willing to do 10,000 employees a year, whatever it is. How do we maximize, including the overheads? How do we maximize, including the fees we pay? How do we maximize the value for somebody who's going to go take that and put in an S&P ETF?
I'm with you, and we heard it loud and clear, and at least from PARS, they're going to go back to the drawing board and give us something different. Yep. What I'm trying to get an agreement on, or at least an understanding, is are we in agreement that, and instead of doing Social Security plus some sort of a retirement plan, that we just do a retirement plan, and whatever that is that we're going to put in Social Security, we can add that into the retirement plan, so the contribution becomes 12.5% from the employer, another 12.5% from the employee.
Do we have the option as an agency to opt out of Social Security?
Yes.
Actually, that was my earlier question, so I was waiting for the presentation.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm trying. I apologize. I'd like to know how we got here again. Because Social Security has a lot of benefits for people because they more likely than not haven't already paying in, and they have to get enough quarters to get their money back out and all that kind of stuff. So going out of Social Security, I'm not quite comfortable with yet. And maybe I'm just not sophisticated enough in what business retirement plans are. But I've always done Social Security plus something.
There's a few cities that actually did not opt out of Social Security. Albany, California, for example, they do Social Security and
interesting.
PERS.
Yeah.
Okay,
but that's pretty rare, but you get both.
Yeah.
If you go the other way, if you go all into one of these plans and you opt out of Social Security, then you're right, your Social Security stops.
But I can tell you that I've never worked for a city that had Social Security, and I've saved a considerable amount of money in the process for something that I know I may not get eventually when I come to Social Security age. I've looked at the amount that they offer. The maximum when you retire at 65 is $2,000, $2,600 a month. Right. It's the absolute maximum. That's assuming that you put in a lot of years and a lot of money into it going in.
35 years.
The assumption is the Social Security is invested in T-bills, and that's how it's been working, and the output of it is what you get.
It's even better. Social Security, you get half of Social Security for making $300,000 over a lifetime, but to get the maximum, you have to make almost $2.5 million to get the maximum. It's a very steep system, but again, that was put in as a safety net, not as a retirement plan.
Right, right.
What your theory is, if we can take that, employee plus employer contribution to Social Security, that
Then you get something real.
12%, and put it into a defined contribution plan,
So
that gives an employee. I get that, and I'm.
if I'm a
not
PG&E
as
employee,
So I
what sort of
didn't, I'm
retirement plan
better
do
at
I have?
understanding it now. Sorry,
I'm
you
sorry.
were.
If I'm a PG&E employee, what sort of retirement plan do I have? Social
Maybe
Security.
stop.
Social Security.
Are you PG&E employee?
I used to be. Social Security plus a 401k with
Yeah.
matching up
Right.
to 4%. And for new employees, a defined contribution pension plan. So it's pretty extensive.
Right.
I actually used to have a defined benefit plan that I gave up by leaving. Although I get a chunk of it. But yeah, they've got all of it.
So I would consider
And the
something
point
like
that I want to
but-
make is
Consider going
it's
on
a
Social
one-time election that you can
I would
do and
too.
you can't get away from. So
Yeah.
if you make an election to go into Social Security, you made it, you're stuck, you're in, there's no out.
Yeah.
This is the time if you're going to make a different election to do it now and not
I'm
some
okay
other
to
time in
make the
future.
election. I do think people's trust in Social Security is diminished. I mean, I actually think it'll be okay, but because politically it's going to be hard. But it depends on the employees we're trying to attract. If they're primarily from the public sector, they're going to be very familiar with something like PARS or PERS or whatever.
First time I knew you could even choose.
I don't know how comfortable they'd be if we just gave them a check to put into.
Well, they have to be taxed.
That confuses everybody.
I think it is. So looking conventional is good. Looking unconventional, I mean, we had this fancy thing that we did at the city of Cupertino, and our employee unions didn't value it at all.
Yeah.
And we got no credit at the bargaining table. It was pretty useless. So I would just say, let's see if we can be relatively conventional as a public agency. So I would say, sure, let's not do Social Security because I mean,
I think there's
it's a big question mark, but I do think, we also ought to be looking at, okay, what is a typical PG&E employee? What sort of retirement package do they have? They're in the utility industry too.
But they're a public company.
I know they're public, but
I know they separated
I
us
know,
this time,
and we're
so-
not. We're not. But I would be looking at, how we would be competitive.
So that is something I did also want to bring up was related to the fact that PG&E is for a for-profit company.
Yeah.
And at our last meeting when we were talking about salaries, we had some pushback from a couple of the directors that we might be paying too much. And then after the
That's
meeting,
true.
a couple of them came to me and said, did the executive board really recognize that we are a public agency? This is taxpayer or, a business, a JPA.
Ratepayer money.
Ratepayer money, thank you, ratepayer money. So it's good to be generous, but don't lose sight of that, was the message I got from two different directors. So
No.
I have that in my head as we're going through this conversation.
So we have a decision to make about Social Security. So how do we do that? It seems like that's a standalone agenda item that you bring to the board and say,
Exactly. I'm
here's
at this point.
here are the pluses and minuses on Social Security.
Yeah, the question is, do we go Social Security or do we not?
Yeah.
And
Do we know what our competing organizations have
I
done?
mean, the reason that
Good question.
the other CCAs,
Marina, etc.
yeah, they're in Social Security.
They stayed in
They're
Social
still,
Security.
yeah.
I was led to believe in the
that's my
beginning we
kind of
didn't have a choice about that, but if we have the
I
choice,
I understood exactly the same way, and then Greg put me together with one of his lawyers in his office, and they said you do have other choices you may want to look into, and that's how I was introduced to PARS.
I think the advantage of the 12% going into your account it gives somebody who's not very financially astute opportunities to make huge mistakes versus just forcing it into Social Security, But on the flip side,
I know.
it does give them all the power and authority, and probably more economic benefit if they just pick the right life cycle.
But
fund.
we are paying well. We are paying very well.
And for that reason, for that more specific reason, because we're paying well and we're going to continue to pay well here in the state of California, not just in this agency, the money that will get dumped into Social Security, likelihood the people that will work here and put in 30 years or 20 years or whatever number of years, they're not going to see much of it coming back. Keep in mind that one of the issues that are being brought up now about Social Security is going to be eventually,
The disparity in location.
and it's going to be pretty much about how much you're earning, and if you're earning enough, then it's going to be means, what do you call it?
Tested.
Means tested. And so I'm guessing the people that will retire here in California, especially out of the Silicon Valley, who are getting paid fairly well, at the end of the day, they're not going to see any Social Security money coming back. All that money that they got put in, 15%, 7.5% from the employer, 7.5% from the employee, are pretty much gone with the wind.
Well, we don't get out of the Medicare part, so it's really just the 12.
Why are
That's
they
correct.
Why are they
Yeah.
gone with the wind?
Because if you do means tested, and if the people retire with got funds from everywhere, other places that are fairly reasonable and a lot of money, they're going to look at that and say, well, you really don't need the $2,500 a month that you would get from Social Security if you were collecting.
You're going to earn too much money.
You're earning
so
too
that
much
you won't-
money.
you
There's
won't
too
be
much
able
money
to draw
coming in,
down on
going
Social
into you.
Security. It's there for you, but your income.
That's
is-
assuming that you've saved all these assets that are generating money for you in retirement, you're saying.
Yes, that assumes that you've
It's
saved
pretty
decent
easy
amount of
if
money.
we have a default plan. Your age is here, so we project your retirement here, and by default, you as an employee start at in this life cycle fund, right? Oh,
That's your
okay.
12.4%.
You're 2030, you're 2035, I'm 2025, etc. That's your default. The truth is, unsophisticated investors, which will be at least half of the employees, this is my private experience, we'll just say, we'll let it ride. 10 years ago, I was one of them, and then I got smarter, and so I care more. But I mean, frankly, those funds are pretty good. What do they do? The point is that, when you're young, you have a high equity mix, and over time, as you get older, the thing gradually shifts, so you're more into more conservative investments. In theory being, if you don't need the money until 20 years from now, you can take more risks. As you get close to retirement, volatility could really whack you, and you don't have time to recover. So people get more conservative, and that's how these funds basically work. But over time, they do a heck of a job, and yeah, it's probably the case with Social Security that, we don't know what's going to happen, but we have little control, and we can well imagine that our employees are going to be means tested in retirement.
Yeah.
I agree
So
with that.
even if you took all of that off the board, you didn't get into the speculation, you said Social Security is going to exist as it exists today, and you did 35 years of contribution to Social Security at this, assume the rate stays the same at 12.4%, and you did that same thing and said put that money into a self-directed or 401A or whatever, I think you find out that you were an order of magnitude ahead by not being in Social
And
Security.
one way to ask the
I
question
think
is,
that's been demonstrated in a lot of literature.
if I get $10,000 a year, and I could either write a check to the government to fund Social Security for myself more, or I could put it into an account that I had control over. Okay? Once they're no longer an employee with us, it rolls over into some IRA, right? Is there really a question what 99 out of 100 people would do?
I think my point, Rod, was I think I'm requesting that it just be a new business item at the next board meeting, and we get the board to formally tell Tom that's what we want, and let's get on with it.
I'm okay with that.
So my plan then is for the board meeting is to request that we select the opt-out of Social Security and direct the investment that would have been going to Social Security along with another 5% of matching funds into an IRA account to be chosen eventually once we look at what you're gonna
What's
come
efficient.
back with, and I mean, quite frankly, there is also the option of a private plan that you can self-direct. You know, we can always do that and find somebody who's a financial advisor and tell them go ahead and invest on our behalf. I'm not too sure this is the best way to go about it. I'd rather do something similar to what PAWS is offering, so all the administrative work would be done somewhere else. But it's fairly obvious that these expenses are just not palatable.
We'll
For our
certainly look
board.
at that for you.
Okay.
And if I may, I am nervous. At the discussion when we talked about salaries, we bumped them up a lot. And,
Yeah, we did. I heard
I'm nervous about that.
But I think hopefully in that we set, John kept saying for
We've set
budgetary
ranges
purposes, pick the biggest number, but we didn't tell Tom to go pay everybody.
I know,
that.
but it's
Hopefully-
public, but the problem is the numbers are public now. The
I
range,
got it.
The
That's
range is
fine.
public.
I just want
I
to
would-
add one thing, not to interrupt Liz. I'm having a heck of a time getting resumes for some of the positions that we opened up. We opened 4 of them, and they all, by my standards, and I'm certain by yours, are getting paid
Well paid.
very well. It's just well beyond what I thought that you guys would be willing to offer to begin with. And I'm still having a heck of a time getting some
That's
resumes,
distressing.
and you know, it goes really side by side with how much money you have to pay to live in this area. I mean, I can't. I've been looking for the last couple of weeks for a place to buy. I'm just completely turned off
Yeah.
because of that. You have to bid $100,000 and $200,000 more than the asking price.
Well, you're not moving to Saratoga. So. Sorry.
So,
Anybody got a room?
yeah, I know.
Granny
so
unit.
So I am disheartened to hear that, but
Well, after the
I
election,
think that
for June.
what I was going to say is the 5%, up to, what did you say, 5% match or something? What did you say, 5%?
I was suggesting that if we go with Social Security, then we take the 7.5 that we would contribute along with the 7.5 that the
Right.
employee contributes. Add to that another 5%.
Okay, so the other
Both
5%.
sides.
So, and again, maybe I'm just being conservative on this point, but I would hold off on the 5% additional. We can always increase that over the time, but we're just starting out as an agency. We've got issues of cash flow and,
If I may add,
Please.
there is a cap to how much you can put in
Yeah.
a 401A,
right,
and I think the cap of
$53,000.
$53,000. So it's not going to be unlimited that you put in.
No, it's still a pretty good chunk.
I agree.
So it's not, it's
I'm just putting the discussion on the table.
Yeah, but it's 12.4%, right? Because we no matter what, if we opt out of Social
Yeah.
Security, we
You
still
have
have
to
to do
do
Medicare,
Medicare.
right?
Yeah.
So we don't get out of the Medicare part of it. So it's just, it's because they get their 1.35 or whatever that.
Yeah. The Medicare is going to be there. Social Security would have been there had we gone.
Yeah.
with
So whatever the
Security.
Social Security amount is, we would just give. And then Liz's proposal
Yeah.
is we hold off on a match above that, at least temporarily, till we can figure out what the lay of the land is.
Right.
But that's what you had in mind going in.
That's what I see. What you're saying is we would have paid that anyway had we
Yeah.
had our 5% match,
I know.
and we were Social Security.
I know.
Yeah.
So he's being cost neutral in his proposal.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get that. I am reconsidering. This is the time and place to do it. I'm just putting it back out there. We really, I think, have had an excellent discussion. It should be at the board level whether we opt in or opt out of Social Security. I think that's really important. And then I think you can give us more of an update on where we are with staff and other things. I would prefer to have a little bit of flexibility that in the upcoming years we can increase the match up to the max. But we don't have to bite that whole bullet off right now at the beginning of an infancy of an agency.
I would prefer also that the whole thing be matched, not just here's your 12%. You get that automatically, and then we'll match. I think even
Oh, that's a nice idea.
Oh no, it's actually mandatory. It has to be mandatory. If you do away with Social Security, you have to do a 401A, a level that is
if you
set.
have to contribute that. Yeah, okay, I got
Yeah,
it.
there's no choice.
So we contribute the.
Because PERS organizations end up doing that already, and there's an employee portion of PERS, and so. Oh yeah. Oh well.
So PERS is definitely no. But aside from that, okay.
So when we talk about the Social Security thing, just since I'm running it through my brain, in the PERS world, there's the 7% employee contribution, and then there's the employer contribution, which is now way more than 7. But in this world, is it the same thing? Is the 6.2 come from us, and then the employee has a, let's say it's PARS, a PARS contribution required of 6.2?
It's a defined contribution.
Yeah, so there is already a match. You've already solved my question. So they've even though it's forced, they've already effectively matched
it.
Yeah.
And then cost neutral I'm fine with, and I worry a little less than you do, because I think some of this is going to settle out by market forces. I don't want to become the electrical equivalent of the golden spigot as we
I know.
deal
And
with water districts.
I was more comfortable, or I was comfortable when we had our original discussions that, I mean, we are right now competing with San Mateo's hiring staff and our own hiring staff. We are going to get San Francisco, we are going to get Alameda, and we don't want our people to get 6 months in or 12 months in and trained and then go bye-bye.
Because they're already living in Alameda and commuting down there.
Right. So I felt at the time that we did a good job in discussing why the salaries needed to be where they were. I liked hearing that the other agencies kept with Social Security. I think that's a good benchmark, just to have the dialogue on.
Maybe they didn't realize. Given the choice, it just seems like it'd be a good idea. Do you know something about why they chose what they did?
No, but I can't imagine they realized it. In my view, they haven't been that clever as what's been happening here. So it doesn't surprise me that they missed that opportunity. They have a lot of other things on their plate.
I absolutely had no idea that is the case, and until I chatted with Greg, and he said, "Why don't you talk to this guy? He knows about this stuff really well. He's another lawyer in their office." And I've talked to him, and he gave me the scoop about it, and he said, especially about making the election on Social Security.
So to me,
I think that's a big win.
Thank you. That is exactly. This is an important recognition for us. It's a very positive thing for us, and it's one of the steps of. If I'm trying to make the decision, I'm saying, okay, what's everybody else do? It's public sector versus private sector. Where do we compare? Whatever. I mean, I'm just going through my own little checklist, and I like the idea because Social Security now is not what it was when I started it, and allowing people to have this new retirement scenario to me is a very positive. And I think, and that's one of the reasons I'm saying we don't have to worry about the additional 5% right now, because we're doing the whole program.
If we were to come back to the board with a recommendation to have a no Social Security matching contribution 10 and 10, would that be more palatable to you? Right now I'm recommending 12.5% each, but if you think it's going to be more palatable to the board to bring it down to a 10%,
Yeah.
10%.
Pardon me. It's not 12.5% each, isn't it? 6 1/4 each.
Well, no, he was saying what his proposal was.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was 7.5. That's how much do people pay for Social
Wait,
Security?
13%.
6.2.
Yeah, 6.2 each.
Is the Social
All right, so
Security?
6.2. It would have been 11.2 and 11.2.
Yeah.
So that was the intent.
Yeah.
Or 12.
So
So let me say it another way. We match Social Security, whatever it is, 6.2.
6.2.
Whatever, 6.2. Okay. And then anything over and above, because that's mandated. Everything over and above that, we would match up to a certain point.
Doesn't Social Security top out at $120,000 a year salary or something?
Yeah, so does the contribution to a 401A will top up to.
So what happens is that people actually get more money in their paycheck when they top
Right.
up.
Yeah.
Okay, so they wouldn't be, and that's when,
So I always like the fall.
I know.
Paycheck got
There
bigger.
was a time in my life when I did get that, but never, it went away.
Social Security money.
So so the answer to your question, short form, is I like keeping Social Security. Starting with the discussion that Social Security is 6 and 2.2, whatever it is, 6.2. Okay, and then we, rather than giving what we think is not the best retirement program for our employees, we are giving them this 401A program. Okay, and we will do the same amount. Okay, that in and of itself is a benefit. So I'm inclined not to give anything more than that right away. If 2 years from now we're doing well, we can do a match to raise it up. But I'm not inclined to do anything more than the amount in Social Security because the program is already better.
I understand, but in a sense that it's going to be going in, not having any match with anybody else that's given already a retirement plan, in addition to either
Okay.
Social Security or to
So
health plan. So
the
trying
other
to find
ones,
something that will say, here's a matching contribution plan that we offer over and above the 6.2 that we would have otherwise had to put in anyway.
so may I backtrack one more time and say at Marin and San Mateo and Sonoma.
Marin is offering 10% 401A in addition to Social Security.
Yeah.
And all of it coming from the employer's pocket, nothing from the employee. I'm suggesting here 3.8 to bring the 6.2 up to 10%.
What's
make it
that's Marin?
Marin is offering 10%. I believe Sonoma is offering a matching contribution of 5 or 6%. I forgot the exact number.
What's interesting about going on ours up to 10, which is really 20 because it's close out,
Yes.
is when you see the 10, you see the other 10, an unsophisticated person who's not looking at every detail would say, okay, that's at least the same. So I don't know, it seems fine.
It's just adding to our, so
I
I keep coming back to the budget, and I have a question about the budget, and I won't belabor this much longer, about the budget. I'm consistently questioning the detail in the budget to see where we're gonna end up, and manage that. So I'll just simply say my starting point is, no Social Security, do the 401A program with the match, and if people want to add to that based on the examples that you bring forward, then so be it.
You said no Social Security?
No Social
Opt out of Social Security.
Opt out of Social
Opt out.
Security.
So Tom, I think what you got to do is bring this,
I agree, I just thought you said the opposite. of
the
that.
no Social Security thing to the board, and then honestly on the match thing, give us the baseline option of nothing, but give us some other
I'll do
options
that.
too, and then we can
Fair
set.
enough.
Then the board can say, well, here's where we really want to land vis-a-vis our competitors.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it's something very special that you landed on that we could opt out of Social Security. I think that is a big deal for, if we do it right, it could be a big deal. Or as Rod notes, maybe our employees don't notice.
Well,
Sometimes we do all this
If you're
work.
too
When
far
we-
out of the norm, then people don't appreciate
Yeah.
it.
They
When we
appreciate
present it to
it.
them, we'll make sure to present it in a way that they will understand that this
Exactly.
is really a
It's
plus.
a big deal. Yeah.
That this is an added bonus that they get
Right.
over and above what they get from anybody
Yeah,
else.
the younger people in particular will really, really benefit.
Jennifer, I think we exhausted this item. We'll be-
Thank
thank
you for
very
your
much.
time.
Appreciate you
We'll
coming.
see you soon.
I'll
Thank
wait
you.
for
At least you see
Yes.
our level of detail on this stuff.
It was a fun group.
Well, we've all been employees, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
we've all done it.
We're managers, and we know the benefit scheme, at least from
Yeah.
deduct
startups. This is-
0.5% from everything, and you got a
All right, I'll
Thank
see
you,
what I can
Jennifer.
do. Thank you so much for your
Send
time.
us the bill for your time, yeah.
Hopefully the rest of the stuff's pretty easy.
Some quick public comment.
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
public- Yes, please.
On that item. So I was in high tech for 8 years and PG&E for a little over 7, and we had Social Security in all of them and 401k in all of them, and in matching as well. That from someone who's been in the area, that's what one would expect. PG&E was nice because it also had a pension plan. I think to your point, it is great to be able to use those dollars of Social Security to be more effective rather than waste. That's a really nice positive. But it will still comes across to me as we're missing something. There's no employee matching of some degree in a 401 plan. Comparing with PG&E's salaries and benefits, there are a lot of other benefits that PG&E employees get that most people aren't aware of. There's some health benefits. There's retiree health benefits that if you're there for at least 10 years, you can keep having your retirement health benefits for a long time. There's bonuses at the beginning of every year if you're average or above average in your performance evals. So if you just look at the base salaries, it looks lower, but there's really a lot more to it. And the other thing that I learned when I was there is that in the lower couple of levels in the office workers, it starts to ramp up from there when you move into lower management and mid management and upper mid management, because there's a multiplier on the bonus every year. It adds another 5% times your salary, so it goes up from like 10% to 15% to 20%. And so there's a rapid escalation if you climb the ladder, which causes its own issues with people trying to climb the ladder really quickly. But there's a misperception that it's low pay. It was certainly lower pay than I had when I was in high tech, but there was a really nice pension. And I just went camping at one of their exclusive campsites that I still have access to. For $25 a night for a tent site and $100 for a cabin. So there's a lot of other things to their benefits, and the escalation as you climb up the ladder just a little bit, and the annual bonuses that people don't see. So there's a lot more to their pay than people realize.
Okay.
Pay and benefits.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
It's just hard when you compare it to other salaries in other public agencies and public
Well, I think
responsibilities.
if we're paying competitively, the question is who's our target? Probably most appropriate are the CCEs, not PG&E. Our whole value proposition is we're going to operate a lot more efficiently than PG&E, right? And so,
Here we are.
Yeah, it's a good discussion. I think we
we've
can
had.
summarize it for the board when we get there.
So the next agenda item has to do with the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you recall, we changed our budget last board meeting from July to June to October to September for reasons I won't get into right now. And that necessitates that we have a new budget and that we need to take to the board. I've done this fairly quickly and in a couple of days. I'm almost guaranteeing that there will be some sizable changes based on what happens with the enrollment, because we are not expecting as many to opt out as this budget assumes there will be 15% opt out. I don't see that happening. Everybody, even PG&E, is saying don't expect that. You know, if you get 5%, you got one too many. You already heard what happened in San Mateo. So there will be obvious changes. The numbers, both for the revenue and the costs, are going to go up. Add another 10% on the top of what you're seeing in here, and that what we may end up seeing.
PG&E had just agreed that we don't have to do the noticing thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
PG&E
wouldn't that
would
be
just
nice?
leave the market safe. It's all yours. We're done.
One thing that I want to point out that is missing, that I realized
State
only
law
yesterday that it's missing from this budget, is that what we're going to be paying to the data management people. That's not insubstantial. I'm missing about something north of 500,000. They'll be paid to the data management people that I didn't put in there. Another thing that I put in here, which is the initial funding, This shows that we have $1.275 million. I think we have a lot more than that, but I'm being extremely on the safe side and fairly conservative because we haven't got information yet from Sunnyvale and Cupertino and Mountain View as far as the cost that of their staff this time. We're obviously up to date on the money that we pay in contractors and whatnot, but we're certainly way behind on. We haven't put a dime yet from the staff time that that the cities have put in already. That didn't make that.
We can default on those agreements, can't we? We can negotiate
We
them
certainly
down.
can. Yeah, that's the plan. As soon as
That's government debt. We will
We just-
Renegotiate.
we just need to move our money out of Sunnyvale's accounts.
Sorry, Tom. We all
Next
went
is
there.
leaving already.
File for bankruptcy.
If you're listening on the recording, that was a joke.
And we'll stop taking notes. So there would be changes. The one thing that I want to point to, if you look at the revenue here is $38 million. The expenses are considerably less, about 31. So this is only after 6 months of being in business.
Incredible,
Yeah.
actually.
We are looking at after all the expenses and even after we put some money in reserves, after we stacked away about 6% of the revenue in reserves, we are looking at about $7 million of net reserves.
Incredible.
Then we can start working
That's
on
after we
energy
fulfilled the
programs.
reserve policy.
Yeah, and keep in mind this is only 6 months of one
I know.
phase and
So
3
what's
months
the
of the
run
second
rate, do you
phase.
think? What's our, I mean, if it's 6 months, our revenue is 37.7 here, and we're only phasing in, what do we figure I remember it was
A
like
full
around
year.
250.
Full year.
250.
We figure when we're in full swing, we're about $250 million.
And if the opt-in rate goes up, that number may go up too.
Yes.
A little bit, yeah. 25.
And we're still talking to some of our large customers to see if we
Yeah.
can bring them in. So that
Hallelujah.
hasn't stopped yet. That discussion hasn't stopped, and right now it's pretty much confidential. And hopefully, we're going to get to a point where we have some deal points that we can talk about. If not, then this assumes if not, but if
There's upside to this forecast.
yes.
So on our purchase side, right, we really think we're going to be able to get all the prices you forecasted.
I've seen the bids are in, the proposals are in, and they certainly are well within the dollar figures that we estimated going in. So I think we're going to be fine.
And then any read on what's going on with PG&E? My theory was that PG&E, since their Marin is out, Sonoma is out, Peninsula, their people will be out, so PG&E is going to get rid of any expensive electricity they have.
Well, I think the one thing that they seem to be fairly well focused on is trying to be indifferent. So they have the PCIA, and now they want to decommission Diablo Canyon, and they want to be indifferent to that as well by charging
Yeah.
everybody. So it's not a bad business to be in if you can have it, the indifference business. I like it, personally.
So was it 2 days ago, the story in the Mercury News about the CPUC and the governor's office? And everybody see that?
No.
So there was an article in the Mercury News, an investigation between the Democratic Party of the state. Nancy McFadden used to be a VP at PG&E, Jerry Brown's executive secretary, collusion, CPUC, not transparent, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I'm
editorial in the
I'm
Mercury
stunned.
News. Well, I mean, honestly, you have more and more of this in the
Yes.
environment,
And on the other side, you have more and more CCAs coming on board,
Yeah, I know.
and the more of them that they come in, the voice gets a little louder and louder, and eventually, and with the PCIA, it keeps going up and
No,
up.
this is gonna
There
be
will be a point where
Yeah.
we're going to have some sort of a clash that
Sure.
and that happened with PG&E over the years with public utilities, time and time again. It's always the case. So there will be, my guess is within 5 years, something is going to need to happen in order to stop the escalation of the indifference.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
When you do the next printout of the budget, I'll offer an observation that do some title heading things, because I kept seeing lines with blanks opposite them, and then I realized it was a header. Like you put Sylvan SV and members' wages, and there was no number across it, and then you had salaries, benefits, and staff below it. Okay, so I was looking, because it's in the same font and the same indent, if you will, and lack of indent, I was reading it as if there was
I
a
got you.
number missing.
Fair enough.
So just do something, help visually.
I just want to
You're looking for
point out.
indentation or something.
I just want to point out that I did pass this on to our treasurer and ask him to put it in a
Better
budget format, and he's just a very busy man.
Yeah, that's
So
okay.
he'll
No,
get to it.
knowing the board as as I've become used to, there will be people that will comment on that. So that's more of a heads up for you.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then since we started talking about the PUC, can I digress to that now? Or you want me to wait? I was just going to ask if we gotten any update on our approval for the CPUC.
No, I have not got it. I did make a phone call a couple of days ago. My contact person over there told me that another layer got added in the approval process, and that person was out on vacation
Aren't they
and coming
required
back in
by
a
law
couple
to
of days.
give us a
They're required by
response?
law to provide the certification by October 14th. That's 90 days from the day we submitted the application. So they have until then, and they can't go, and they haven't come back to us with any questions or issues or problems. So I assume that everything is just moving forward.
Well, let's prepare a letter for October 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still thinking that maybe by this week, early next week, it will be here.
What would we do with this 7.6 if this all comes to pass? And okay, we have 500 for data.
I'll pay back the cities first.
I think you take care of the cities and some of those obligations, but I think there are energy
Reserves.
programs that we could start talking
Funding.
about.
I think that the one thing that I know is probably going to be a priority, because it comes 2020, we're going to need to make certain commitments that will go beyond 10 years. That's the law now, that in 2020 we need to commit to renewable resources for more than 10 years. That means you have to actually buy some new resources that will be built. And in order for us to do that, it would be good to have money in the bank. It would be good to have a credit rating that all comes to reduce your cost. You heard from those guys at Pauses, the more money you get in the system, the less your expenses. The less money you have, the more you get charged. And
So you put it in the reserves until such time as we decide we're
exactly.
So when the budget gets presented, you should make that point. We don't know the details yet, but have the answer to Rod's question.
This is incredibly strong. I mean, it's just blows me away.
Yeah. Understatement.
I'm not counting the chickens until they hatch.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, and I appreciate that, but it shows that we have a strong hand, and that's important for people that are paying attention to whether we're viable. Like, who knows, the county? I don't know.
Well, actually, the first set of individuals or corporations that will be very keen on seeing these numbers is going to be the suppliers, because
Yes.
they don't want to be engaged in a
Right.
$100, $200 million contract unless they know that we have a strong financial position, and they rely on the forecasts upfront before then later on, once the money is in, then we don't have to have a lockbox, we don't have to have an LOI,
Yeah, no,
we don't have to
that
have all
cost will
these
be
different
lower.
things.
Well, our
that
large corporate customers probably will like it too.
for sure.
I'm sure some of this is confidential, so I don't want to know if I can't know it. But I'm always curious who you've been talking to, who are considered the big users and all of that. Is VTA a big user at all?
I'm sorry.
VTA?
don't believe it's one of our top customers. The top ones is Lockheed, which, by the way, elected to come in the first phase. This is a good thing because the first phase
Are they
is
direct access today?
no.
They
No,
could have been.
they all, our customers 100%, but they decided to go into the first phase instead of phase number 2. They make up about 88% of our total load, so that's going to be a good chunk of money for us, and obviously some savings for them.
It's a cap and trade thing for them.
Yeah, so they are coming in the first phase. I've been talking to both Google and Apple.
And Facebook, I would assume too.
Facebook is not here. Facebook is in over at the other
Are
side.
all of their servers and everything?
I think they mostly in Menlo Park. I don't know if they have anything here, but I'll check.
Okay.
They
I
certainly
All
not.
these companies are caching all of it.
Yeah.
Well, so I had, years ago now, I mean, talking 8 years ago or so, huge chunk of business up doing server farms, just converting all kinds of buildings. to
Amazon
server.
AWS here in San Francisco, their server farms, probably, right?
So I just out of curiosity, it'd be good to kind of have a sense of, because we had to put mechanical cooling systems in to beat the band, never mind the electrical. So
Yeah, if you desire either at the board meeting or here to get to know more of the details of what we do with the large customers, I can invite Don.
That would be
to
great.
give you a report, because he's the one that's spending 100% of his time.
Because here you're going and talking to sophisticated customers of cap and trade and other reasons might be coming in.
Yeah.
That would be a really interesting story. At least, I mean, personally, I think.
I think it'd just be interesting to know what the list is of who we think are the big customers, who's going in.
We
who's
have that already.
discussion,
We have that already. I know some of them, but the one that has that list with consumption and or everything you can think of is Don, and he's continuously talking to them. And he's with I forgot the name of that.
He's our business liaison with Joint Venture Silicon
Joint
Valley.
Venture.
I don't know if we can give him that level of data. There's some privacy concerns
Yeah.
related to some of that,
Yeah,
but we
sure.
definitely can share what we can. I don't know if we can tell you the ranking of customers, but maybe we can show you here's the top.
an
just
alphabetical list.
Right, something
Whatever
like
you-
that.
It'd be great to see
Don
the-
Bray, right?
Here are the
Yeah,
top
Don
100
Bray.
people,
Yeah.
and here's who's already signing up,
Mhm.
and here's who's definitely not signing up. I mean, we'd love to hear why.
We
both
can
ways.
tell you that the top 100 is more than 50% of our load, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah, and really,
Just the top 100
See,
customers.
that's good for us to know.
yes.
Yeah.
Are we good with the budget?
Yeah, any public comment anymore? Sold. We'll move on to the logo.
New and improved logo.
all right, so I put the new and improved logo on a piece of one of our collaterals so you can kind of see what it would look like instead of a giant logo, because this is really how we use it, right? We use it in, this is a frequently asked questions document that I kind of use in my events and stuff like that. Everyone likes to see this in the back. What does their bill look like? Did I not pass it around?
I'm sorry. I handed one off, and then it was like, oh, I'm done. I didn't.
Good job.
I'm sleeping down here.
So we brought you a new logo. We brought the board a new logo last month. There were some questions about the flame, looking like a flame. So
Oh, you have.
I have it.
we had MIG. MIG is our consultant that kind of helped us develop this. They've also helped us with some other things. They also helped us with our website. So we had them do a focus group, a quick focus group, so that I could bring something back to the board in October. And they talked to 23 people, and 3 of those people said it looked like a flame, which is about 13%, which is larger than we'd want to look, you know. Unfortunately, if their pool's a
We
little
had 12
larger.
board members and 3 said
Three.
Yeah, exactly. So they came back, and this is what they think would look better, and this is less flame-like. This is extending that, kind of tilting it to be less
Making the white.
flame it,
Yeah.
make the vein up longer. It still looks similar. It's not going to mess up any of our, you know, we're changing collateral currently and everything like that.
I thought it looked a lot more like a leaf. I thought they did
Okay.
a good job.
Yep.
Really? I thought, so I have them side by side here,
Uh-huh.
and I like the old one.
Okay. Well, you like the old one to begin with anyway.
Okay, so what am I, a focus group? Well, and there were two, I mean, I liked it coming in from this side because it kind of arches in nicely.
Yeah. Well, I think
And,
that's...
and the other thing is, this looks more stemmy because it gets a little fatter, whereas the new one, you know, comes down to a point, which could be more like a gas injector.
Let's.
Oh, no.
comes
This
down
is
to
the
a point.
Injector.
Injector, where you're
You mean the
injecting
stem.
natural gas.
You would like the stem to be more consistent
The
with the first
stem.
version.
Is fatter. This got skinnier. And I mean, I could see extending the white vein, but for my taste, you know, having it be on the right side versus the left side. So I don't know. I mean, to me, the one looks less. This doesn't look.
I have
This
to put
actually
on-
might look less gassy.
I'm gonna have to put on
The new
thicker
one.
glasses to compare.
No. So here's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the one we saw last month. Everybody looking?
So I'm
And
going
then
to
I go over here, and then I come over here, and
So you can also look at your agenda.
well, anyway,
This looks like-
I'm only one person, and my vote doesn't matter.
No, that's why I'm bringing it
But
here.
I'm just
so we can have a
telling you that
discussion.
my
Yeah.
impression would be that has the stem, at least with that, has more to do with gas.
I would.
If I was worried about it, which I'm
fine
not
with,
really.
Yeah, I'm fine with the stem being adjusted to be more
I don't know if
consistent
we
with
can
the
keep
original.
messing with it though.
We
We
can't.
need
I
to
know.
investigate.
But I will tell you that there were other problems with the one from last time. And again, one of the board members
Whatever.
made a comment to me, which I don't need to repeat, but once he said it, I went, oh, yes. So,
That's really helpful, thanks.
It was more related
We'll
to
take that
the leaf
feedback.
without a stem. So I think I had a slide that had a leaf without a stem. Maybe it didn't look the
I
best.
don't
So
know.
we're not going to
It
have
had,
use that
it
logo.
had a contour to it that was not conducive. And so I like this because it's really
Whatever.
different.
So, Rod, let me try
It
to
wasn't
understand
me, it
your
was
STEM issues.
Okay.
Because maybe, this is not finalized, and I can,
Yeah, it's
if
just
I
a-
can do
You see
something
this?
for the STEM before.
This looks
before-
fat
Yes. So it's like square at the bottom.
and full. It looks like. And this one, I mean, I don't.
It's the origin of where the white started from. If they moved it to the other side of the stem,
Well, so this is
It's
the one that we
longer,
saw
too.
last month.
Yeah.
It looks stemmy to me, and if I go to this pointy little thing, that looks more like what I would expect a gas flame to look like.
Okay.
It's coming from a point.
So the other stem kind of has like a.
But I agree. The white, making the white go all the way up.
Yeah.
You know, if you actually look at a gas flame,
Mm-hmm.
you see all this orange, and then the hot blue center, right?
So I think that tweak to the stem where it's
It got pointy.
non-pointy, make it square off. We could do that.
My feedback,
Everyone else
but other
okay
than
with
that,
that?
I don't care anymore.
Won't hurt.
did you answer the question about whether it's four-color process compatible?
Yeah, so
Because-
we've been having lots of back and forth with MIG related to that. They've been talking with they've contacted multiple printers. Let's see what I got. A couple printers to determine what the issues are. So they are making adjustments to the teal and the orange CMYK build to ensure that they reproduce well. And I know your issue is with the 7,000 Pantone colors.
Well, you guys gave Pantone numbers, and so I just looked them up to see what the
Yeah.
four-color process equivalent. Here's the deal with printing. If you say I want this Pantone color, they'll make that color ink for you, and they'll charge you twice as much.
Okay.
And so you can definitely get the color, but if we're printing out tons of stuff over the years,
Yeah.
if you can do one that's four-color processable, it's just cheaper to print everything, and this is forever. And so that
So I
was
actually,
my question.
So I actually had them watch the meeting. I said,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm explaining this well. Why don't you watch the meeting so we can talk about it? So
Okay.
they're looking into it and they're going to revise the teal color probably.
Okay.
That's
So-
what they told me.
One thing to watch
I don't know
out.
if you'll notice it, but I think
No, it
the
should-
numbers.
It should be a really subtle thing, and then
Yeah.
for those of us in the printing space, we'll just look up the Pantone and the four-color process, and then there's slides where they're side by side.
Okay.
And if they look the same, I should have brought my.
You
know what?
showed me. You showed me after the
I
meeting.
showed you one online, but they sell these color swatches that are just like the ones you get at the paint store, and they show you the pure Pantone, and then they show you the 4-color process side by side.
So you specified by CMYK.
Yeah, so if you pick one where they look the same
Yeah.
or close to the same, then it's pretty cheap. One of the ones they picked, and I don't remember if it was teal or the green one, it just looked very different. And then you'd print it, and either we wouldn't look the right color, or you'd have to spend more money to look the right color.
And who cares exactly about what the color is, right? I mean, it ought to be,
Well,
you
a
want
lot
it to
of
be
people do,
relative.
apparently.
No, you want it to be consistent, but you don't care exactly what the
No,
teal
no,
is.
I don't care what.
It's
yeah,
just-
exactly.
right?
That's yeah.
I just wanted it so we could print stuff off of a laser printer and have it be the same color as
So
getting
can-
it printed off of a press.
Can I just say, I would like you to throw my comments about the logo and flame in the trash if, in a professional designer's opinion, this is an optimization and fattening the stem
Okay.
would mess it up. I do not want to mess it up. I'm good with either the first or the second
Thank you.
logo or something in between.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank
So
you.
do not take my one-person view of this too literally. Okay?
Thank you.
And mine is pretty simple. Just they'll find a color and that'll be that, and we'll be done with
Right.
that. As long as it's closer than what you had, we're good.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to look out for saving a little bit of money down the line.
You're absolutely
I
right.
think
You
we're
should
good.
be aware that also if you print on matte paper versus a gloss paper, it's going to look a little bit different
Right.
also.
Sure.
And this is probably 20-pound paper. If you go to 28-pound paper, when you hold it up, you don't see the
Oh,
stuff
that's
show
common.
through the back as much.
So this is recycled
So it depends
paper.
on what you want to do with it, but
Yeah.
things to consider.
Okay.
Yeah, I worry when we print out, hundreds of thousands of copies of this for lots of flyers and mailers and stuff. Let's make that printing as cheap as possible.
Yeah. So right now, this is what I'm printing on. It's just what City Cupertino has: 100% recycled paper on our regular printer. I don't know what kind of printer it is, but the notices and things like that will be, large printers that'll. So. Yeah. So it sounds like we're good on the logo, and we can change
Alright.
everything. Well, thank you very much for all your input, and I think now we're
Here
pretty
you
close.
thought it was easy.
Right, well, this is probably iteration number 6, so.
Well, there you go. Everybody got to learn something about printing the hard way.
Thank you. Yeah, so thanks for that, and it was, it's been a good process. So we're going to move forward with that logo, and I'll look into the stem.
Thank you for that patience.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Is that the end of the agenda?
No, we got the
Any
meeting.
public comment? If not, we will move on to the meeting change for the executive committee item 5.
It's, just recognizing that both meetings will be for November and December will be happening for the executive committee meeting. That will be happening around time where people like to take time off and travel or just plain not work. I'm suggesting that we cancel both meetings and establish another one that would be in the first week of December and in place of both of them. I've checked with Greg to see if this requires a resolution and having a special meeting or any of that, and he said no, because the meetings for the executive committee were not established by resolution, and therefore the committee can choose to do what it deemed appropriate. So
I had sent comments earlier, and it was along that exact same line, which is special versus regular. I don't think matters for this group. For the other group, then it would
does,
be.
yeah.
But in this case, we're changing our normal meeting date to a different date, and it doesn't make it any more special or any more regular. But I thought the date was good.
It's actually better for me because tomorrow I should be closing escrow on a packing and shipping store. In the second week of December, I won't be able to leave that store, I can guarantee you.
Oh.
So the first week, I've looked at last year's sales, and the difference between the first week and the second week is almost double the number of people that come through the door. So
that's great.
I expect the second and third week of December I won't be anywhere.
What company?
It's a postal annex.
My sister works for UPS, and she gets no vacation from 2 weeks before Thanksgiving to 2 weeks after New Year's. She's actually the chief pilot for one of their 4 airplanes, but in that zone, everybody who can fly flies. So
Same thing for drivers too.
yeah, she's just all over the planet. It's nothing they can do. It's the job. Move Amazon packages and move iPods. And last year it was Star Wars action figures, oddly.
iPods.
I mean,
Didn't you say 5
iPhones.
years ago?
Yeah, there's no such thing as iPods.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
I guess it's getting there.
It's 10 years.
Good. Liz, any issue with
No,
that?
I wouldn't have been able to make either of the other meetings, so this is good.
Great. I have a BACMed meeting in theory that Wednesday morning, but by 2,
Should be okay.
it's probably okay. Depends on the agenda. And I'll be coming down from San Francisco unless that meeting's canceled.
Andrea, did you arrange for this? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so are you looking for a formal recommendation, or can we simply approve that by
I'm good.
consent?
Fine.
Looks like we get
We
approval.
can.
So move second unanimous.
Moved, seconded, unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Feels good, Howard.
These iPads.
Okay, then we're going to
Letter to CPUC.
oh yeah.
Oh, this is just attachments to, that we just want to make you aware of. Just correspondence.
So I did have some questions on that. I don't, at the executive level, or board level, my thought is that having a letter just from our JPA might not have the clout that we need it to have, and going just to the PUC may not have the clout we need it to have. I was wanting to suggest that it may be a board decision, but that the cities association should be asked to send a letter, and each city council or mayor might be asked to sign a letter. And the letter should go not only to the PUC, but it should be CC'd to the state representatives. And I would go state, and I would consider even doing federal. Because one is we have very close relationships with our state representatives, assembly and senate, and also with our senators and congresspeople. And I just think keeping it out in the public, that this is what's going on. I know Anna Eschew's office keeps very close tabs on these types of things. And I just think it doesn't hurt to add a little bit of oomph behind it.
We ought to copy. I mean, that's a good suggestion. We
Yeah.
could just copy the world, right? Copy.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the things that we're going to be recommending to the board is to join California CCA association that just formed to deal with legislative regulatory matters. And I think there would be a great deal of help for us to be able to take care of these things, and we'll make sure that they have access to all the appropriate places and all the council members and all the cities and representatives to make sure that everybody gets informed of what we need to do and everybody understand what our position is.
Right, because
So
I
go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like Assemblymember Lowe would assign a staff person to follow up on these kind of things, and he is the deputy assistant majority whip, whatever it is. So he is an important person to leverage.
Isn't that from Campbell?
Yes.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Did we talk about that at the beginning of the meeting? The importance of Campbell and... No. Sorry.
So it's an interesting situation. When I look at this sort of from an interesting, and everybody can beat me up later, the logic of it, right, PG&E was able to get a certain amount of money in the rates for Diablo Canyon
Yes.
over the years.
Right.
And that was regulated by the CPUC, but they never really included in that the rates to decommission it. So now they need to somehow get the money to decommission it. And shouldn't they get that from all the people who use the power, which unfortunately would be all of our customers?
Actually, the money that everybody's been paying to PG&E did have a portion to deal with the decommissioning of.
Oh, did it?
Oh yeah,
I did not.
always.
I did not realize
Everybody's
that.
been paying for it. I
Okay.
think and it's not decommissioning that's the issue for them, as much as what they want to do is to replace
Offset the cost of replacement.
the
With
2,000
green.
megawatt with a whole bunch of
For
renewable
some load
resources,
that won't
energy
exist.
efficiency, and what they want to do also is
If they
to
can get us to pay for it, then they don't, and then they can sell us the power on
Right,
the other side.
Right.
It's brilliant. If
It's
you're a
really
business.
aggravating a lot of people, and we starting to work on it. Next week, I'm going to be in a meeting where this issue is going to be discussed with PG&E. Then eventually, PG&E is going to try to work a settlement. That's been pretty the standard routine with them. Is they float something, then they try to settle with everybody before they take it to the administrative law judge and get a ruling on it in their favor. I think this one is going to be a heavy one, and they're going to really go out of their way to try to figure out a way to.
I had
get
not realized
everybody
if
to
they had
settle
already
with them.
collected money from us for decommissioning, then leave us alone.
Oh, they have been since they started them,
Okay.
since they opened the plan.
Yeah. So this is where I think state and federal legislators are going to be most useful. And the
Yes.
sooner we get them engaged, the better.
Yes?
Just real quick, so one reason for a letter, I think, is because, to the CPUC, is because this entity isn't yet a party to that or any other proceeding. And being a party to a CPUC proceeding is how you actually get legal standing in
Yes.
that proceeding.
Right.
So this doesn't have a whole lot of effect without doing what you're saying, is then making sure the legislature knows about it. And then through the Cal CCA, being a party to the proceeding on our behalf and others,
Yes.
that gives the standing that then the ALJ and the
Can-
CPUC commissioners
can
actually
represent.
can act on those,
Right.
the official protests and the reply to comments. And so a letter, there's no power to that letter in the way that the CPUC operates.
didn't
They
know
can't
that,
make a
but
decision
thank you.
based on that. They did regulatory affairs for years at PG&E. And relative to this, and some of what Tom mentioned about the energy efficiency, they took the senior director of policy out of the energy efficiency and customer care area that I worked with for years and put her on this project to figure out the energy efficiency side of it. So they put a lot of really heavy hitters into this effort to try to get as much as they could.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. Now that you've said that, I get it.
And that's
Thank
one
you.
reason why the pay scale goes like this.
Touche, thank you.
That's really interesting. So what do we have to do to make sure we're a formal part of it?
It's actually really simple. It's a 1 or 2 line letter to the CPUC for any given proceeding, requesting to become a party to that proceeding. But it's whether or not you don't necessarily need to be a party if you've got another way to affect it through, say, Cal CCA.
Yeah, if we get into
Right.
association.
But it's actually very simple. If you have to say why it matters to you, and then the ALJ will add. But the criteria for that's pretty low. Although I've seen it rejected before, but it's
Ours would be
really
huge,
simple.
clearly.
And then you end up getting copied on everything. And so there's a huge burden to being involved in regulatory proceedings. It's a huge administrative burden. That's why it's helpful to have consultants. Why
Why we should
CCA
get
is very
together.
helpful to spread that effort and pain of regulatory proceedings across all the CCAs and have someone else.
Yeah, generally, when working with the public utilities, when proceeding were to happen that affects them, what they do is they have everybody sends something that says they want to be part of the proceedings. So what they generally do is they allow the joint association to write the comments, and so they become extensive. Then what the cities then will do is to write a letter saying, we support the comments that were provided by CMUA. Thank you very much. We're in line with those guys. And we may want to add this, that, or the other thing, but generally they always just send the supportive letter of the joint associations.
And I was going to make one other comment, which is, although San Jose and other cities aren't party to us, they could still write a letter.
Yeah.
Yes. It may actually have a little more oomph to it if each entity becomes a party to the proceeding and then just has a really basic, like you would in a letter, say, I agree. but then you've actually got another party to the proceeding chiming in. In many things I was involved with, there's a lot of union labor involved, and they had every different component, local, regional, different councils. Each one of them was a party to the proceeding, and so there'd be large numbers of parties chiming in with the same opinion, but they're really all the same people. But it had an effect on what they wanted and what they got.
I think that works at council meetings too.
Yeah.
And to the extent that you folks can or have someone that we can talk to in San Jose that works on that side, let me know who they are, and I'll give them a call and see
We have a
if we
Campbell
can bring them in.
resident who's in charge of the San Jose.
Julie?
Really?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, I get the
Jared, I
feeling
have to
that's
get
not
to
going to be the
Cupertino before
person
they
I'm
build
going
the
to talk
wall.
to.
Yes, sir. Okay, anything else on this topic? No. In the packet, I actually didn't see the letter that we've been talking about.
It came in a separate email,
Yeah,
I
it was,
think.
Oh,
we
yeah.
sent it over, yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Any board member comments? Staff comments?
My apologies for being late. I just figured the room would be full and I would slip in.
Well,
You
Howard,
guys would
we're not going to
halfway
be
done.
we're not going to be voting for you. Just so you know. Just so you know.
We did talk about an election though.
We did talk about a wall.
All right.
And Saratoga was paying for it, I think.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
sure till you pay for it.
So I do have one more loose end thought. We have a pretty full calendar coming up, I think, for the board in October and November, and we are not going to have a December meeting. Do we know yet for the board?
I
We
think
just
we
said
have one
first week of
scheduled,
December.
but if we get to that point and we definitely don't need it, then we'll cancel it.
I just have challenges, but I'm being selfish on that. But the reason I was asking is, as soon as is reasonably possible with your remaining 4 hours that you don't need to sleep, an agenda look ahead is helpful. So like in January, I think we're electing officers again, and then we might have to do some other things. So
We actually do have an 11 by 17 that has
you'd
everything
be
that we
so
have in
kind.
mind. Andrea, could we make sure that we bring it to the board?
that,
Thank you.
I think it would help all of
We'll
us.
do that.
Yes.
Yeah, my apologies. We should have it like every month,
Yes.
so you'll see what's coming
Yes.
for the next whatever number of months.
Excellent.
Do we think we're having a meeting on December 14th? Is another specific request.
I think that the one thing that I can assure you of is if we have everything lined up with the creditors, with the bank, the credit agreement and the agreements between SVCE and the four cities and bank, if all that is in place by November, then we will be able to bring in the contracts as well,
Okay.
the master agreements, not the amount or the dollar cost for the power supply, but more the master agreements with a range of prices of what we will eventually get when we engage in transactions. If we get all that stuff done in November, then
We could
we
decide.
can cancel the December. But
Well,
if we're still
okay.
behind,
Yeah. And then, do we have anything that takes 2 readings, or is that just city ordinances? Do we have
that's
anything?
cities. I'm not aware of
We
anything
make
that
all
requires.
resolutions, all decisions on one act?
We don't do ordinances.
Okay. Yeah, I know we don't do ordinances. Okay, so I can fly out after the 14th, so I can keep that.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
Where are you going?
So, I go back east.
Oh,
Massachusetts.
Very good. Any other comments? If not, we stand adjourned till our next meeting. 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 Till our next meeting.